Transmigrated as a disabled protagonist, how should I continue the script? Chapter 31, The New Right Leg. Yakimaru's mind was blank, carefully processing each word of the ceremonial phrases in Chinese. Can the storyline continue straight from here? Is this an automatic reward system, rather than a reward from the Transmigration Department? He had signed a trainee contract with the Transmigration Department. It seemed like if a trainee encountered life-threatening danger, the Transmigration Department would step in once to provide protection. But the memory was too distant, and he couldn't quite recall. Or perhaps the Transmigration Department had placed the trainee protection power in the system, and when an unexpected event occurred, the system unlocked the protection function. Imagining it this way, a Class D worker from the Transmigration Department is much better than a Class D worker from the SCP Foundation. What nonsense! Yakimaru, unable to voice more vulgar words, thought bitterly while on the verge of tears, I've sent out so many messages, but not a single response. The first message I receive is an automatic reward from the system. Where is everyone? Where are all your workers from the Transmigration Department? He wanted to file a complaint with the Parallel World Management Bureau. Your Transmigration Department disregards the safety of interns, throwing them into the plot world and then ignoring the subsequent issues. He still considers himself lucky, able to trigger the main storyline mission, but what about those struggling in high-risk worlds, who don't survive long enough to trigger the main storyline mission? What should those interns do then? Open the gift pack. Yes/no. Yakimaru, cherishing the system text, clicked to open the gift pack with a glimmer of hope. Yes. The gift pack jumped out from the mailbox, exploding with the firework effect in the game. The system scattered a large amount of beautiful golden dust. The golden dust in the air formed rows of Chinese characters, not cold at all, but rather the light of hope at dawn. The main storyline of the world of Dororo involves the subjugation of 12 demon gods, while the rest pertains to branch storylines. The system has detected that the intern has advanced 1/12 of the main storyline. Since the intern has not yet restored their body parts, this was an error in detection. To make up for it, a gift pack is directly awarded, allowing the intern to choose the appropriate section for advancement. 1. Obtain the first body part in the main storyline, right leg. 2. Return to foster father Jukai, subdue the demon god lizard demon, and proceed with the storyline 2 years later. 3. Erase the memories of the characters related to the storyline, 100 people. Choose one of the 3 options. Please select your reward, trainee. Yakimaru's gaze was fixed intensely on the first option. He then slowly looked towards the second option, recalling his foster father with difficulty, while the third option did not even enter his range of consideration. Should he choose the body part or return to the main storyline? To set out once again at 16. Placed in the real world, Yakimaru seemed as if he had been comforted by Daystars and stopped crying. Aside from not wearing a face mask, his appearance was no different from usual. The illusion only added a layer of beautiful human skin, making him more like an ordinary person, but it couldn't change his original form. Facing Daystars, Dazai, for once, overcame his usual nervousness around his face and waved his hand at him. Yakimaru, let go. Allow the illusion on your body to returns. Then, you will be able to speak. Daystars felt that a repeated phrase of Dororo sounded really pleasant. Even if one wanted to sob, they would need the chance to do so, and with Yakimaru having lost his tongue and vocal cords, he really wouldn't be able to cry out loud. Daystars' fingers were being restrained by him, the prosthetic joints flexible, holding him tightly. Afterward, Yaki-kun, your right leg? Mori Ogai exclaimed in shock. Daystars looked at Yakimaru in confusion. Yakimaru, sitting on the chair, was trembling, and his prosthetic right leg suddenly fell onto the ground. New bones had broken through the surface, growing outwards, and at the top of the prosthetic, muscles quickly enveloped the bones of the right leg, with deep red toes, real and solid, pressing against the ground. Thus, the scene of reverse growth, fantastical to the extreme, could only be compared to the "thou shalt not die" ability. Yakimaru relaxed his grip and took Dororo's hand, unintentionally bumping into his newly grown right leg, which seemed to have had its skin peeled off. The right leg was slender and straight, indescribably so, with muscles that felt resilient. Dazai-Osamu circled around the hospital bed and squatted down in front of Yakimaru to examine him. Dazai-kun, gloves. Mori Ogai threw a pair of medical gloves to Dazai-Osamu. Dazai-Osamu quickly put them on, cautious of bacterial infection, and then touched Yakimaru's right leg with his rudimentary medical knowledge. He repeated to confirm that this was a real object, not some illusion caused by an ability. Truly miraculous. Dazai-Osamu's hand moved from his knee to check the yukata-covered thigh. The deep red muscle patterns were warm, with visible blood vessels, no pain, and no tactile sensation. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like a normal thigh after losing its skin. The black-haired boy sitting on the chair appeared bewildered, and even the face of a monster could look so pure. Even if he was a monster, he had to be the most harmless, the one that could move people's hearts the most. However, after sensing something, Yakimaru suddenly jolted, slapping away Dazai-Osamu's hand. Dororo, what are you groping inside the clothes for? Ahem, Dazai-kun. Mori Ogai timely stopped Dazai-Osamu's inappropriate behavior, looking embarrassed, and said, I have equipment here. You can't figure anything out with your hands. Why not use the equipment to examine the newly grown right leg? Dazai-Osamu turned around and said to the adult in disapproval, Mori-san, what kind of indecent things are you thinking about? He criticized, my aesthetic sense is perfectly normal, how could I have such thoughts about Yakimaru? Mori Ogai forced a smile, rolling his eyes internally, Dazai-kun, you can face Yaki-kun normally, yet you still think your sense of aesthetics is normal? Normal people wouldn't hold hands with such a monster. The port mafia boss in black started the device, leaving the two brats to share the space. Dazai-Osamu was surprised to see Yakimaru move his toes. Your toes are moving. Something so simple became a great joy when it involved Yakimaru. Yakimaru ultimately chose the first reward option, retrieving his original body part. He didn't expect the first part to be his right leg, feeling both joy and a tinge of regret that the restored part wasn't his eyes or ears. He wanted to see her, to hear her voice, longing for warmth like any human would. As Yakimaru adjusted to his right leg, he made an effort to stand, his body swaying as he tried to maintain balance. His clumsiness almost made Dazai-Osamu laugh, recalling that the other probably had never walked with his own two legs before. Memories may be present right after birth, and language can be acquired during childhood, but something as simple as walking is not something that someone like Yakimaru, who has been disabled for over 10 years, can easily hope for. Yakimaru learning to walk is just as significant as a child standing upright for the first time in life. He takes another step closer to being an ordinary person. Yakimaru, come on, Dazai-Osamu quietly said, almost inaudibly. He didn't help the other person up. Even doting parents will grit their teeth as they watch their children stagger and wobble while learning to walk, let alone someone as rational as him. Learning to walk is something that everyone must accomplish. Dazai-Osamu and Yakimaru maintained a 1 meter distance, with Dazai leading the way in front of him. Dazai's entire attention was on Yakimaru. Without the suppression of, no longer human, and under the bond of their contract, an unimaginable illusion once again appeared on Yakimaru. The puppet, covered in human skin, had the face of a delicate black-haired boy, moving toward Dazai-Osamu's direction. His toes gripped the ground, and his prosthetic legs struggled to keep him walking. Each step forward is a step in life, affirming the will to survive that Yakimaru forged after crossing over. I want to survive. I want to defeat those demon gods and reclaim my remaining body parts. I want to live until the day I see Dororo again, and return together with Dororo to see our foster father. I'm sorry, I didn't choose you. Father. As Yakimaru slowly walked forward, having regained his right leg, he no longer resented the transmigration department. He opened his heart to accept that Jukai was his father, not just a character in a predestined story who had saved him. When the medical scanner was prepared, Yakimaru was extremely obedient. As soon as he was told to lie down, he immediately lay down. He speculated that Dororo's father was not only a bandit leader, interacting with evildoers every day, but also somehow proficient in medical skills. Naturally, someone recovering his body in such a way would astonish people in ancient times. It perfectly fits the bone structure. It's as if it grew there naturally, without any difference. Mori Ogai carefully bandaged Yakamaru's right leg. Though his body was healthy, it was still important not to leave exposed muscles out in the open air, primarily because it could scare people. Being so well behaved, playing with Yaki-kun really is as cute as a puppet. Mori Ogai couldn't help but think to himself, his brain forcibly ignoring the terrifying image from before. The illusionist is truly skilled. Dazai-Osamu swallowed a whole apple as he finished looking through the examination report. So the right leg is restored. Rather than saying it's restored, it's more like it's returned. After Mori Ogai finished tying the bandage, he pulled the robe over Yakamaru's thigh and gently lifted the boy, who seemed uncertain whether he should sit up or not. Perhaps we all misunderstood. His body parts were stored elsewhere, and once certain conditions are met, they will return to him completely intact. Moreover, I discovered that his right leg is extremely powerful. Whether it's the bone density or the muscle distribution, it surpasses even those who have trained for years. Mori Ogai hit the key points in just a few words, demonstrating an ability no less than reading a script. Dazai-Osamu raised his tone with a casual, "Oh." Mori Ogai subtly warned, "Don't think of targeting Chiyoku-kun again. He needs rest." Dazai-Osamu complained, "Mori-san is truly someone who discards the old for the new. Chiya hasn't even worked for you yet, and you already think he's yours. Is my labor not worth anything?" Without listening to Mori-san's explanation, Dazai-Osamu pushed him away, causing the pure white life flame to once again fall into Yakamaru's inner world. Yakamaru sat there watching for a long time, never tiring of it. He didn't need to care about what was happening in the outside world, Dororo would always be by his side. Finally, a faint smile appeared on Yakamaru's face. It seemed like he had endured countless storms. Always pure. This resilience left a deep impression on Dazai-Osamu, but it was not enough. To allow this person to walk under the sun like an ordinary person without being ostracized, there were still many things to do in the future. "Yakamaru, call me Dororo." "No, since you rely on me to survive, you should call me Master. Hurry and call me Master." "Dororo." Avoiding Dazai-Osamu, Elise appeared, tugging at Rintaro's sleeve, saying, "They are so boring." Mori Ogai silently smiled, "Don't disturb Dazai-kun, the furry." Dazai-Osamu spared him a bullet glare. Who is the child here? However, in Mori Ogai's view, no one truly grows up. Such feelings don't exist between adults, they are only cultivated during the innocent and immature times. Dazai-Osamu felt a bit parched and ran off to find some water. After hurrying along the way for so long, he could finally rest for a moment. Taking advantage of Dazai-Osamu's absence, Mori Ogai asked quite seriously, "Yaki-kun, what am I in your eyes?" Elise also widened her curious blue eyes. In Rin Taro's eyes, Yakamaru surely wasn't simply a villain, right? Relying solely on his intuition, Yakamaru silently gazed at Mori Ogai's life flame. It still stung his eyes. How should he address this fiery man? At this moment, Yakamaru had already determined that Dororo would be a lifelong companion. Even if they encounter difficulties in the future, nothing would be able to separate them. The main storyline mission of the world of Dororo wasn't about romance. Even if his identity as a transmigrator were to be exposed, and he had learned a little too much Japanese, it wouldn't matter. He couldn't bear the thought of Dororo leaving him and being with someone else. Thus, Yakamaru discarded his identity as a transmigrator and spoke in Japanese. Shuto. Ha. Mori Ogai choked on his own saliva and continuously coughed. Hearing the noise, Dazai-Osamu returned and asked with a suspicious tone. "Mori-san, what did you say to Yakamaru? He can't even hear you." "I wasn't underestimating Yaki-kun's instincts." Mori Ogai's expression was somewhat restrained. It wasn't until he left the room that Mori Ogai's back trembled. His hand holding Elise showed a strange smile, and the thoughts of his ability user self overlapped with his mind in an instant. Dazai-kun, will you ever have a girlfriend in the future? Because what Yakimaru had said was father-in-law. Chapter 31 End. Chapter 32, Through the Open Path. Yakimaru couldn't wait for the father-in-law to get angry, quietly watching as Mori Ogai left. When he bumped into Dazai-Osamu again, his excitement bubbled over like a harmonious aura, almost engulfing Dazai-Osamu. Dororo's father had grabbed his hand, even placed it into Dororo's hand. His acceptance of their feelings was like the father-in-law approving his pursuit of Dororo. Now, even the form of address was established, and calling it wrong would be a minor issue at best. He had already gained the approval to openly pursue the bandit's daughter as his future girlfriend. How wonderful! This father-in-law, who was thought to be a villain, turned out to be much friendlier than expected. Is this because of Dororo? It must be that Dororo spoke many good words on his behalf, otherwise how would an ordinary family accept him? Yakimaru wasn't someone with low self-esteem, but the years of mental pressure still made him unable to stand with confidence. If the transmigration department were a bit more reliable, he wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. Once he regains all of his body parts, he will have the chance to achieve happiness. He wouldn't need to worry about whether the transmigration department would take him back happily or not, as his abilities would allow him to fully establish himself and survive in the ancient world. Life presents a second choice. What are you laughing at? You and Mori-san are both strange, don't let him corrupt you. What Dazai-Osamu liked most about Yakimaru was his pure will. He didn't care about anything else because Yakimaru would never betray him. He placed the cup of water on the table, and Yakimaru reached out, grabbed it, and drank. This scene reminded Dazai-Osamu of the first time they met, when Yakimaru, by the riverside, lifted the water to drink. Back then, he drank the filthy river water, but now he could drink clean water meant for consumption. The years are peaceful. No one has a tragedy that is beyond remedy. Dazai-Osamu quietly thought, even the hair in the light becomes beautiful. It's a pity that this illusionist didn't pursue becoming a cosmetic master, just imagine how many girls would ask for cosmetic assistance. Without thinking, Dazai-Osamu was caught by the hand by Yakimaru, and the illusion vanished. Yakimaru had no concern about his own appearance, losing his tongue didn't matter, what he wanted was to always be together with Dororo. Dazai-Osamu sighed, his thin shoulders bearing a burden of pressure that shouldn't belong to someone of this age. Yakimaru. My aesthetic sense might still be salvageable. In his ears, Yumino Kyusaku's childish voice echoed in the midst of his confusion, the puppet big brother is so cute. It's over. He seems to be getting used to it. After Yakimaru got his right leg back, a prosthetic limb was smoothly removed and placed in Mori Ogai's clinic, which operates without a business license. As a collectible, such a rare prosthetic is probably impossible to find anywhere else in the world. As for the other two, the Sheep King Nakahara Chuya was the first to wake up. Mori Ogai and Nakahara Chuya had a private conversation for a while. Although he couldn't get Nakahara Chuya's agreement, Chuya's attitude toward the port mafia softened somewhat. He no longer looked at Mori Ogai with the same hatred-filled gaze he used to reserve for the former boss. After all, the image Mori Ogai presented was one of actively changing the current state of Yokohama for the better. Of course, when it comes to hidden ruthlessness, the former boss couldn't compare to the current one. Mori Ogai is the type of terrifying boss who can smile while talking about assassinating the former boss and plotting a coup for power. I don't want to stay in the clinic, everything inside carries the breath of Mori-san's schemes. Dazai-Osamu handed Yakimaru the mask once again. In the moment of handing it over, something worldly seemed to slip away. Yakimaru, without a trace of regret over his lost tongue, thought that this world was too mystical. There were demon gods, evil entities, and people with special powers. As long as he followed someone he liked while hunting the demon gods, life wouldn't require much more consideration. The figures of the two disappeared outside the clinic. In the clinic, Rokudo Mukuro also woke up, rubbing his aching head, seeing a repulsive man in a white coat. Who are you? This humble one is just a doctor, practicing medicine to save lives. A doctor? Rokudo Mukuro glanced around, not spotting any flaws. This truly seemed to be a clinic. May I ask, have you seen my two companions? Unsure of his situation and how much danger he was in, Rokudo Mukuro cautiously asked the other person, receiving a clear answer from Mori Ogai. Oh, you're talking about the two young men who look about your age, right? Their injuries seem a bit more serious than yours. I've already bandaged their external wounds, and they're resting in another room. Mori Ogai gleefully looked at the blue-haired boy who had struck fear into the outside mafia world, suddenly darting toward the indicated patient room. Things like shackles exist everywhere. This truly is the era of youth. A few days later, Nakahara Chiya handled a couple of small matters on behalf of Mori Ogai to repay a favor. When he returned to Suribachi Street, he found that the sheep's base had been trashed, and none of the sheep members were waiting there for him. After asking around, he learned that GSS had taken the young boys and girls of the organization away, and the rumors about Suribachi Street had completely disappeared, no longer spreading jokes about Vangala Decimo. The newest rumor was that Nakahara Chiya was closely connected to the incident that destroyed Suribachi Street years ago, and that he was truly a monster. Nakahara Chiya closed his eyes and let out a weary sigh. A monster, then a monster it is. The orange-haired youth squatted at the edge of the stairs, burying his head in his knees, covering his eyes with his hands. Those passing by didn't dare to approach and disturb this gravity manipulator, their eyes filled only with fear and dread. The corrupted force emanating from his body was linked to Arahabaki, and it wouldn't be wrong to call him a god of calamity walking among humans. Humans fear the gods. Isn't that something perfectly natural? As he squatted there, he stayed squatting for the entire afternoon, his legs numb, and the emotions in his eyes treasured deep within his memories. As two sets of footsteps approached, Nakahara Chiya didn't even bother to lift his head. Who is it? He felt something tap the top of his head, and Nakahara Chiya confusedly realized that the force of gravity couldn't resist the figure. Ah, it seemed Arahabaki had been struck down. It's you. He looked at the other person, the reflection of his blue eyes capturing the boy's face. Yakimaru was touching the lowered hood, acknowledging that the overly refined life flame had become purer. Although there was still a dark red demon god at the center, he no longer mistook it as the enemy. The demon god was enveloped in a faint white flame, and as long as it didn't lose control, it wouldn't harm the world. Ah. Not knowing what to say to the person he had fought before. Yakimaru let out a nasal sound, and with Dazai Osamu's silent consent from behind, communicated with him in a mute manner. You are a human. Nakahara Chiya's hair was disheveled, the orange strands slightly spiky, yet they were easily tousled into a mess under Yakimaru's palm. His blue eyes were vacant, and with his slightly chubby face, he looked like an innocent young boy. From behind, Dazai Osamu murmured, top tier at playing the victim, huh, Chiya. Nakahara Chiya, having lost the energy to argue, covered his face and said, did you all just come to laugh at me? Dazai Osamu shrugged, who's laughing at you? It's Yakimaru who wanted to find you. Nakahara Chiya had a certain psychological shadow towards Yakimaru. You're not going to hunt me down again, are you? Yakimaru. Unable to understand what he's saying, Yakimaru pointed to his leg. Nakahara Chiya glanced over as Yakimaru pointed to his right leg. Confused, Nakahara couldn't grasp the skill to see through illusion. Dazai Osamu had to step forward, patting Yakimaru's shoulder. At that moment, Nakahara Chiya saw it clearly, the right leg of Yakimaru had been restored. He was astonished, why is there still one leg that hasn't been restored? Dazai Osamu, playing with Yakimaru's mask in his hand, smiled and said, it's a long story, and it has a bit to do with you. Why don't we have a proper exchange about it later? Nakahara Chiya was about to speak when his eyes met Yakimaru's directly. Nakahara Chuya's legs gave way, and he sat down on the ground, his soul practically leaving his body, forgetting the words in his mind. Yakimaru, not having touched him, looked down in confusion. Why did he get shorter? The figure, originally filled with a life flame, collapsed onto the ground like a large pancake. A mashed bean filling. Daily tormenting of the Sheep King, 1/1. The three of them walked along Suribachi Street, heading toward the battle-ridden staircase leading to the rooftop. Nakahara Chuya, in front, was sulking and didn't think to look back at the other two. He only heard Dazayo-samu, speaking to Yakimaru with gleeful mischief. Yakimaru, I told you there's no need to go out of your way to drag him along. Next time we order lunchboxes, let's specifically call him and make him deliver it at top speed. I don't deliver lunchboxes. Nakahara Chuya turned around and shouted. Ah. Dazayo-samu continued to gossip with the deaf Yakimaru, saying, there's also a courier, a newspaper vendor, a milk delivery guy, this little dwarf sure has a lot of side jobs. Nakahara Chuya, feeling slightly embarrassed, said, at least I earn my own money, which is better than being a lazy freeloader. He was obviously referring to Dazayo-samu. Dazayo-samu pulled out a card. I'll check how much money is in here. Nakahara Chuya was stunned and quickly rummaged through his own pockets. When did his bank card end up in Dazayo-samu's hands? Give it back. Dazayo-samu slipped behind Yakimaru, his fingers as if magic, quickly make the card disappear. Before the two could continue playing around, Yakimaru patted himself down and found a card that had been placed on him. Nakahara Chuya, with lightning speed, snatched it back, and Dazayo-samu complained, Yakimaru, I noticed you're helping him. Yakimaru was genuinely wronged. Due to this accusation, Yakimaru started pulling out several items from his body, including a listening device, a GPS tracker, a signal transmitter, etc. These items were tucked into the inner seams of his yukata, sleeves, belt, and even the soles of his wooden sandals. Practically his entire body was equipped with these extra gadgets. Are you a pervert? Nakahara Chuya shouted loudly at Dazayo-samu. Dazayo-samu broke into a cold sweat. Animal instincts is too much. Without any need for investigation, he was already being scolded. Damn it, I'm not a pervert. Yakimaru. Dazayo-samu stuffed the item in the other's hand into his pocket, preventing him from continuing to search. By this time, Yakimaru had already put his mask back on, returning to his normal state. Dororo. Dazayo-samu smiled, let's go. Yakimaru stepped up the stairs with him, and in the world of his mind's eye, two flames flickered, guiding the way. Not far away, the Vongala family was in the midst of a battle with Rokudo Mukuro. It's like destiny repeats itself, the past will always return. Rokudo Mukuro's cursed fate with the Vongala family will continue until he is purified of his hatred by Sawada Tsunayoshi's life flame, no longer seeking to wash the mafia in blood. The bright, dazzling orange life flame soared into the sky, a radiant burst of life force. Sawada Tsunayoshi was risking his life to save his companions. Yakimaru's fingers slightly twitched. Holding his hand, Dazayo-samu, sensing his thoughts, asked, there's a battle ahead, did you see something? Yakimaru thought to himself, a brilliant and pure life. This world is truly vibrant and colorful. Chapter 32 End. Chapter 33, Parallel World. After Sawada Tsunayoshi defeated Rokudo Mukuro, he was stunned to realize, you're saying Futa isn't here? With a brief whoosh, the orange flame on his head extinguished. Suna's Dame nature was fully exposed. Rokudo Mukuro, covering his eye of the 6 paths of reincarnation that had been purified by the sky flame, struggled but still found the strength to taunt, you could figure out that Futa was with me, yet you don't know about the chaos at Suribachi Street a few days ago? At that time, I was unconscious, saved by a passing doctor, but at the clinic, I never saw a trace of that child. Reborn, standing to the side, sharply asked, clinic? Whose clinic? Rokudo Mukuro, exhausted, replied, a clinic near Suribachi Street, a doctor's clinic with the surname Mori. He calls himself a barefoot doctor, but he probably has nothing to do with this matter. Reborn. Mori. And a doctor profession. The barefoot doctor you claim has no relation could very well be the main culprit. Reborn stopped asking further, went to a corner, and took out his phone to contact someone. Mori-san, is Futa with you? As a result, he received a positive response, along with some overly polite remarks, implying that the Vongala family would have to pay a hefty price for information for this informant. Reborn, with no authority, coldly tossed over Sawada Tsunayoshi's father's phone number. Let this kind of internal strife be handled by the external advisor. Lying on the ground, Rokudo Mukuro suddenly sensed something. Forcing his body to rise, he urged his two defeated companions through the mental pact. Ken, Chikusa. Run. The Vindichi are coming. Outside, Nakahara Chiya, Dazayo-samu, and Yakamara happened to run into the Vindichi. The three apprehended convicts, the Vindichi prison members, were dressed in pitch-black cloaks, their tall figures holding chains. Their faces were wrapped in bandages, making their eerie appearance deeply unsettling, which somehow piqued Dazayo-samu's peculiar taste. This profession. It looks really intense. Nakahara Chiya, with nerves tense and ready for battle, spoke in a heartbeat-steadying voice. Who are you? No need for him to restrain it, Yakimaru took the lead, revealing a ferocious killing intent, standing in front of the two. What he saw was no longer something that could be considered human, with a black flame burning wildly, extremely twisted, constantly producing force. This was a human who had fallen into the wicked path of evil. We are Vindichi, here to capture a few fugitives who escaped from prison. The leader of this Vindichi group spoke in a heavy, cold, and strange voice, genuine Japanese. Please step aside. The second Vindichi spoke. Otherwise, you will be considered as enemies of the Vindichi prison. The third Vindichi slowly continued, and the atmosphere instantly grew tense to the point where it could explode at any moment. Monsters. Yakimaru's face remained indifferent as he identified the three's true nature. Slaughter. Not deceived by lies, Yakimaru intended to touch his own arm, but his left hand was caught by Dazayo-samu, and his right arm was restrained by Nakahara Chiya. The two acted in perfect sync at the crucial moment, firmly suppressing Yakimaru, not wanting to be inexplicably dragged into a foreign power's operation to capture Rokudo Mukuro. Dazayo-samu silently thought, Rokudo Mukuro has no chance of winning. Nakahara Chiya crazily yelled, Yakimaru, I don't want to clean up others' mess again. Being restraints, Yakimaru's killing intent subsided by more than half. The mask on his face looked at Dazayo-samu on the left, then at Nakahara Chiya on the right, as if complaining, why are you stopping me from hitting the bad guys? The two youths, carried the Yakimaru who is taller than both of them, repositioned him away from the path. Dazayo-samu smiled and said, please. The three Vindichi seemed to ignore this ridiculous scene, pausing briefly then continue to capture Rokudo Mukuro. However, what truly caused their downfall was that the edge of their coats happened to brush against Dazayo-samu's. This seemingly unintentional contact left all three Vindichi as if struck by lightning, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. Nakahara Chiya grumbled, what did you do to them? Dazayo-samu innocently glanced at the retreating Vindichi group, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. He casually toyed with Yakimaru's knuckles. I just helped teach them a lesson for you. Because of the unwillingness to die, the flame of night grew stronger, but upon encountering the supernatural force, no longer human, it successfully sensed the breath of death at that exact second, feeling suffocated. Yakimaru saw with his own eyes the process and thought it was Dororo who purified them. How impressive! The evil spirits almost ascended to heaven. Nakahara Chiya, who had come in arrogance, left in shame. After taking a breath outside, he turned back as if choked by a mouthful of dog food, watching the endlessly muddy Dazayo-samu before him as he sought encouragement from Yakimaru. If you have the ability then let go, so why make things difficult for a mute person? Nakahara Chiya intentionally muttering under his breath, the mute Yakimaru actually responded. Dororo is like a shrine maiden. Yakamaru grabbed Dazai-Osamu's hands, lifted them, and gently placed them on his own forehead. Although Dororo couldn't purify the deep crimson glow within him, it could still soothe his soul. It is said that only the purest individuals possess the power of purification, able to dispel demons and guide people toward goodness. No, you just acted out a wrong scene from Inuyasha Next Door. Pfft, I will protect you. Dazai-Osamu took 3 seconds to react, then drew a good luck charm on his forehead with a blessing gesture. After finishing, Dazai-Osamu spoke mysteriously, Yakamaru will live a long and healthy life, outliving me, and forcibly remove all those you think are bad people. Nakahara Chuya's forehead twitched, sensing that this guy had some hidden meaning, as if aiming at those he had killed himself. I've been cleared of my crimes by Yakamaru. Wait, it's cleared. Right? Nakahara Chuya, unsure, anxiously went to check on Yakamaru, but unfortunately, the other couldn't tell him anything for the time being. When the 3 of them arrived at the battle site, Rokudo Mukuro had his neck chained tightly by the Vindichi and was dragged out like a dead dog. He immediately stopped struggling, his hands hanging down. The 6 paths of reincarnation darkened with blood, even the sky flame couldn't cleanse. He unintentionally glanced at Yakamaru as he lowered his gaze. A rapid yet weak voice appeared in Yakamaru's mind, it was the voice of someone still alive. Save them. Rescue Ken and Chikusa. If you want to keep your skin and tongue, then listen to me. I'll sustain your illusion inside the prison. With my ability, there will be a chance in the future to restore your 5 senses. Rokudo Mukuro found a sliver of life within a dead end through the contract on his body. In Suribachi Street, rumors spread that Yakamaru, who defeated Nakahara Chuya, had an undeniable hope of victory over the Vindichi. He had no intention of placing his hope on anyone else. He clearly understood that if he was captured, the Vindichi's pursuit of the other 2 would ease, as he was their primary target. Yakamaru had so many things he wanted to say, his heart raced, and the thoughts that stuck in his chest turned into a chaotic mess. Slow down the pace a bit. I can't understand what you're saying. Don't tell me you don't understand Japanese. Rokudo Mukuro cursed to himself. Without much time to think, Rokudo Mukuro gritted his teeth and tried to take over the other person's body, but something even more terrifying happened, he couldn't possess Yakamaru. It was as if there was an invisible wall surrounding him, solid and unbreakable, blocking him entirely. The wall owner Dazai-Osamu hid the fame deep down. Dazai-Osamu pressed his ear, tilting his head to listen to the sound of Yakamaru's heartbeat, his gaze narrowing. Could the illusionist surpass himself to connect with Yakamaru? Mental connection. Upon discovering this abnormality, Dazai-Osamu lightly hooked Yakamaru's fingertip, once again tightening the grip, causing Rokudo Mukuro's voice to suddenly disappear completely from Yakamaru's mental world. Yakamaru sensed the emptiness in his mental world, unable to hear any sound from outsiders anymore. This is definitely not Dororo's voice. If I can't understand, then forget it. He didn't overthink it, simply retreating into himself, as after all, Dororo was holding his hand. He thought to himself, a girl's hand must be both soft and warm, as beautiful as the pure white life flame. Rokudo Mukuro, with a pale expression, was dragged down by the Vindichi, not venting his frustration on Yakamaru. He only felt that he had been blind, choosing 2 terrible companions. One would go berserk, and the other lacked all 5 senses. Even the Vongala group seemed more reliable, at least those people could manage a civil war. The scene was left with only the Vongala family members, and Sawada Tsunayoshi sat on the ground, feeling a sense of relief. For the first time, facing someone as tragic and evil as Rokudo Mukuro, his emotions were complicated, reborn. How long will Rokudo Mukuro be imprisoned? That Vindichi prison. Before Sawada Tsunayoshi could finish speaking, he made an sound, and watched as a group of strangers appeared at the entrance. Who are you all? The 3 boys, who seemed to be the same age as him, had different expressions on their faces. Hyper-intuition told him, the person arriving now is absolutely not ordinary. Just now, the Vindichi group deliberately avoided these three people, which doesn't resemble the heartless description Reborn had just given. Nakahara Chuya, too lazy to socialize, glanced at Dazai-Osamu. Dazai-Osamu thought for a moment and stepped forward to speak. "Welcome to Yokohama." The boy with sharp eyes and bandaged pupils smiled. "I am Dazai-Osamu, a student of the Port Mafia boss, here to discuss the matter of exchanging ranking futa with your esteemed organization. This identity is both light and heavy, and the excuse isn't completely unreasonable." Reborn carefully assessed Dazai-Osamu, and unexpectedly discovered that this boy, not much different from Dame Suna, did not show a trace of nervousness. Is this point worth thinking about? Absolutely, everyone in the world knows the reputation of the Vangala family. Reborn thought to himself, Dame Suna, learn from others. Stop breaking out in cold sweat, people might think you were exhausted after defeating Rokudo Mukuro. Show a bit of the Vangala Decimo spirit. Sawada, exhausted, Tsunayoshi wiped away cold sweat and said fearfully, "What is the Port Mafia?" Dazai-Osamu glanced at him, recognizing him as the one who defeated Rokudo Mukuro, and smiled enthusiastically. "It is a local, legal, tax-paying private enterprise." Reborn kicked Sawada Tsunayoshi, not allowing him to be deceived, and said, "Dame Suna, I already told you about the local situation before, and you dare to forget what I said?" Sawada Tsunayoshi cried out in pain, "You said so much, how could I possibly remember it all?" "Is that so?" Reborn snorted coldly. "Very good. The Vangala Decimo's heir has been found." Dazai-Osamu's eyes flickered swiftly, observing how Sawada Tsunayoshi was mercilessly scolded by his tutor. No matter how much money people of this world spent, they could never hire the world's top assassin as a teacher. Port Mafia, he is the Vangala Decimo's heir. Reborn did not make any cryptic remarks, standing on Sawada Tsunayoshi's shoulder, his tiny figure carrying great weight. "Regarding Futa's matter, I've already entrusted the external advisor to contact you. Haven't you received the latest news yet?" Dazai-Osamu took out his phone and, after glancing at it, replied. "I've received it. Mori-san said to host you all, and then you will be able to see ranking Futa." Reborn, not needing external forces to host him, declined. However, Dazai-Osamu said, ranking Futa has agreed to rank for the Port Mafia 3 times. And these 3 opportunities were something Dazai-Osamu fought for, with Mori Ogai agreeing to give him 1 chance for a ranking. Reborn furrowed his brow. As expected, he would need to be there himself. That boss Mori was a cunning old fox, and if Futa ranked something he shouldn't, things could get out of hand. The old fox scent, a little fox, huh? Yokohama, in fact, had more talents compared to other organizations. The baby in suit coldly agreed. "All right." Sitting on the ground, Sawada Tsunayoshi was completely confused throughout the process, not daring to say a word, rubbing his head that was aching from being kicked. Immediately after, he reacted a beat too late and screamed, his whole body racked with extreme pain from overexertion. It hurts." A few others from the Vangala family laughed without any sense of sympathy, but the silver-haired boy quickly ran over, showing concern for Sawada Tsunayoshi, though he couldn't do anything to relieve the pain. This evening, the Vangala family members were arranged by the Port Mafia to be hosted at a hotel in name. Dazai-Osamu wisely did not go to bother them. Isn't it fun raising Yakimaru and play around with Chuya, so why rushing to interact with these strangers? The next day, the playful sounds of Lambo and Ipin, the 2 little children, appeared in the hotel lobby, attracting the attention of other guests. Sawada Tsunayoshi felt a bit uneasy. Honestly, he had never stayed at a 5-star hotel before. Oh, he was just a child from an ordinary family, completely unable to adapt to such high-class treatment. "Reborn, should we stop them or not?" Sawada Tsunayoshi, afraid of being looked down upon, asked. "You decide." Reborn, as thick-skinned as ever, replied. Sawada Tsunayoshi shrank back, deciding to act as if he didn't see anything. He had no intention of getting caught in the crossfire between Lambo and Ipin. Neither of the 5-year-olds was easy to deal with. Futa, with a calm expression, sat alone on the sofa, even quieter than Sawada Tsunayoshi. Last night, he was returned by the port mafia, reporting the situation all night. He repeatedly assured that he didn't reveal too much of the Vongala family's intelligence, which allowed him to avoid punishment from the family. Tsunani, I don't want to stay here either. Unfortunately, the only one who could be absent was the uncontrollable, arrogant Hibari Kyoya, who went out to find someone to fight. The hotel lobby managers were quick-witted and promptly handled the other guests' matters. By the time it was past 10 in the morning, no more guests had checked into the lobby. Two young men approached, one in front of the other, with a peculiar style, holding hands affectionately. At such an age, coupled with their outstanding appearance concealed due to injuries, the two had bandages wrapped around them like a joke, making it hard for anyone to imagine that beneath those bandages were self-inflicted scars and bodies without skin or flesh. When walking on the street, they always made others think they had a close relationship, envious of the bond formed from growing up together since childhood. In reality, they hadn't even known each other for half a year. Daystars arrived at the destination and greeted the members of the Vongala family. Good morning. As soon as the words left his mouth, the hall erupted with Lambo's loud laughter. Outsider, Lambo-sama has heard of you all, something about port mafia, right? Lambo-sama wants to prove he's the strongest. The little cow-suited child, bouncing around with explosive enthusiasm, grabbed a grenade toy, ready to throw it at them. In the next second, Lambo clearly saw the faces of Daystars and Yakimaru, his pupils instantly dilating. He burst into tears. Wah, the bandaged monster is back. Suna. Help. The monster from 3 years ago is back, and Lambo-sama can't beat him. Almost wetting his pants, the little cow disguised as a child rushed as fast as possible toward the one person who could protect him, Sawada Tsunayoshi. Sawada Tsunayoshi wasn't sure whether he should be happy or cry. Lambo, you only remember me at times like this. Reborn's eyebrow twitched. A monster from 3 years ago. Lambo was lively and mischievous, not many things could scare him. This little brat was an assassin raised by the small Italian mafia Bovino family, always carrying the 10-year bazooka. He was also the future lightning guardian officially appointed by the Vongala family, and even in his childish words, he hid a lot of information. Suna. Save me. 3 years ago, a monster came, and Lambo-sama couldn't defeat him. Almost immediately, the thought of how 3 years ago Lambo was only 2 years old, to be able to have a 2-year-old mafia child remember. Either it's someone from a past connection, or someone from the future. There was no pretense on Daystars' face of surprise. He had similarly caught onto the key phrase, 3 years ago. However, he had never left the country, much less known any members of a mafia family far away in Italy. Vongala Decimo, this child, Daystars pointed at the child behind Sawada Tsunayoshi. Haha, just call me Sawada Tsunayoshi, Sawada Tsunayoshi said, sweating coldly from his forehead as he faced Daystars. He didn't feel any friendliness, only a strange sense of distance, coupled with an unease of dealing with someone not easily provoked. He quickly pulled Lambo to the front, feeling Lambo trembling in his hands. Lambo? Don't casually give others nicknames like that. However, Lambo's fear was genuine. The trauma of his childhood appeared before his eyes, and this time, it was so sudden and unexpected that it was overwhelming. Daystars' smile gradually faded. Even Sawada Tsunayoshi could sense that something was wrong from Lambo's fear, because the person Lambo was afraid of wasn't Daystars, but rather the boy in the yukata standing beside him. That boy was truly a beautiful youth, his face not tightly wrapped in bandages, looking serene yet expressionless. Following Daystars like a delicate puppet, he didn't evoke a sense of terror in others. Is the bandaged monster you mentioned referring to Yakimaru? Daystars, bringing Yakimaru along, walked towards Sawada Tsunayoshi, while Lambo's miserable screams grew even louder. Sawada Tsunayoshi's scalp tingled. Lambo, these are two people, not monsters. Reborn cut him off. Keep watching. Sawada Tsunayoshi, who hadn't yet cleared the darkness from his bright eyes, looked at Yakimaru, and at first glance, he inexplicably felt a sense of goodwill toward him. More than half of his conflicted emotions toward strangers disappeared. Reborn calmly observed Sawada Tsunayoshi's demeanor, thinking that his hyper-intuition, inherited from his ancestors, could avoid danger and seek fortune. Yet Lambo's tears unexpectedly swells up. Not human, Suna. This bandaged monster doesn't even have a face. It's scarier by countless times compared to the anatomical models at home. How can someone like that still be alive? Monster, go away. Lambo-sama will never give up. Even though he was trembling in fear, Lambo still dared to shout at Yakimaru. Dazai-osamu, deep in thought, murmured, "This is interesting." Color changing. Yakimaru focused his spiritual eye on Sawada Tsunayoshi, puzzled by the opponent's warm white life flame. Where was the orange glow before? He reached forward, following the instinct of seeking beauty before conscious thought, hoping to ignite another color in the darkness. Sawada Tsunayoshi, ah. Sawada Tsunayoshi blinked his golden brown eyes. You want to see another color? The brown-haired boy scratched his face with his finger, speaking shyly, "Without a dying will bullet, I can't use the dying will flame. Touching my forehead won't help either." Dazai-osamu was startled. Was this guy talking to Yakimaru? Do not hurt the Decimo. Gokudera, he's just being friendly with Suna. Suna doesn't seem to object. Yakimaru, about to touch Sawada Tsunayoshi's hand, stopped mid-air. Gokudera's dissatisfied voice and Yamamoto Takeshi's cheerful reconciling tone were both isolated outside the realm of the spiritual world. What is this? His eyes shifted downwards, and within another small life flame, he discovered a pale pink glow. Pale pink. A special item? Yakimaru's hand tilted to one side, and he reached out to touch Lambo's head. Lambo turned to stone. Yakimaru. Dazai-osamu stepped forward, afraid that this reckless child might hurt his hand. But the previously terrified Lambo suddenly calmed down, tears welling in his eyes as he looked at Yakimaru. With trembling hands, he searched through the hair and pulled out a light pink bazooka, offering it to the other. For you. Someone told me to give you. Yakimaru was captivated by the beautiful appearance and continued toward this unknown, peculiar object. 3 years ago. While Lambo was playing at home, he accidentally broke a 10-year bazooka. He was then transported to the world 10 years into the future, where he saw a person lying on the bed, missing all facial features, skin, and with crippled limbs. The other had long, disheveled hair, and right before his eyes, the body was being assembled into the appearance of a normal person. This scene haunted Lambo as a nightmare for 3 years, and to this day, he still cannot forget it. He was so terrified that he continuously backed away, pressing against the wall, not daring to raise his head, while he clearly remembered a low, tired voice by his ear. Lambo, the next time you see him, give him the cannon. This is the deal. If you don't do it, for the rest of your life, you'll live in this endless nightmare. It was truly frightening. Lambo-sama couldn't admit that this was a human being. No human could look so hideous. It's just a cannon, isn't it? If you're not afraid of dying, go ahead and use it. When the pink bazooka left his hand, Lambo once again retreated into Sawada Tsunayoshi's embrace, covering his ears, closing his eyes, and muttering softly, "The nightmare is gone, I've completed the deal." The pink bazooka in Yakimaru's hand suddenly exploded. Pink smoke enveloped him. With no longer human as his support, Dazai-osamu suddenly couldn't smile anymore, his hand grasping at nothing. What is this? 10-year bazooka. Reborn was extremely displeased, staring at Yakimaru as the figure reappeared once again after disappearing in the pale pink mist. This bazooka allows a person to exchange places with their self 10 years in the future for 5 minutes, but due to some unexpected circumstances, it has been classified as a prohibited item and is no longer in production. Anyone familiar with the 10-year bazooka knows they can't set their sights on it, as it cannot fulfill any wish to change the past. Using the 10-year bazooka to change the past. That is an impossible plan. The past cannot be changed. 10-year bazooka passed Vongala family's testing and measurement. It didn't go through a time axis, but rather a parallel space. In other words, the exchange target of the bazooka came from a parallel world 10 years later. The pale pink smoke dissipated. A long-haired young man appeared within the smoke, his figure much taller and thinner than the original, and his appearance had already matured into adulthood. Through the mist, he had a pair of indifferent gray-brown eyes, slightly raised at the corners, with facial features faintly showing much maturity. Those eyes held a human-like expression, but soon tears began to stream out. You are Dororo, huh? Chapter 33 End. Chapter 34, To Save. The temporal space shifted. The light pink mist beside the black-haired boy disappeared, and the black-haired boy stretched his arms in all directions, searching for someone. Dororo? His world plunged into darkness. At 10 a.m. in the streets of Yokohama, cars and people bustled about. No one noticed a young man suddenly transforming into a boy, his eyes wide as he groped at the air like a blind person. Each person was preoccupied with their own life path, looking down at their phones or hurrying somewhere, unable to intersect with his world. Yakimaru, from beginning to end, never knew that he had transmigrated. His eyes saw the many changing people, and the life flames everywhere, though not pure white, but none of them were Dororo. He placed his hand against the wall and walked toward an empty spot where no one was. Dororo, where are you? The stubborn Yakimaru always believed that it was his own carelessness that caused him to get lost, not that she had abandoned him. He knew that if Dororo wanted to leave him, there were countless opportunities. But she would always find him within a day. Yakimaru, behind the mask, had no facial skin, and whenever he thought of her, he couldn't help but twitch his muscles. In his impression, this was meant to be a smile. He knew he would smile hideously, but she never despised him. From their first meeting, she was willing to see his appearance and then reach out to hold his hand. In the world 10 years later, Yakimaru slowly walked in his own world, solitary and self-contained, without noticing the car parked on the opposite side of the street. The owner of the car sat in the driver's seat, smoking a cigarette, with the entire inside of the car filled with smoke. Seeing Yakimaru walking ahead, the young man extinguished his cigarette, stepped on the accelerator, and kept the car at a certain distance from the other, following behind while observing the black-haired boy who seemed easily lured. Is it this person? Nakahara Chiya's gaze was indifferent, thinking back to the failure of the previous leader, and said, who writes in a will that at a certain time, in a certain place, they need to protect someone here? The Port Mafia succession method is bizarre. The previous boss supposedly died of illness, but in reality, it was murder. The boss before that supposedly retired, but in reality, they disappeared. And the boss before them, even worse. 2 years ago, someone from the highest ranks of the Port Mafia leaped to their death, bidding farewell to the world. Thinking about this, Nakahara Chiya felt his heart clench. Damn blue mackerel. Why does something always happen whenever I'm away on a mission? If Yakimaru was Dazai's lover, that's still a bit of a stretch, but taking care of a widow, if you consider it that way, makes sense. The problem is that Dazai didn't even go to the armed detective agency to find him while he was alive. No, even using the word find to describe it feels too much. You secretly loved him your whole life. The newly appointed Port Mafia boss, Nakahara Chiya, muttered under his breath as he monitored people on the street, following the will's instructions. It wasn't until he saw the armed detective agency members coming their way to Yakimaru. Nakahara Chiya sighed in relief. Just like that, the will is complete. There was no need to follow any further. For some reason, Nakahara Chiya felt a wave of sorrow, as if Dazai had completely severed his connection to this world. Even though he himself wasn't entirely sure what that blue mackerel had been striving for all these years, the other had finally finished what he wanted to do, leaving this world without a trace of regret. His hand turned the wheel, taking the exit at the junction. No one would know that the current Port Mafia boss had been idly following a member of the armed detective agency. Yosano Akiko was walking along the upper pedestrian path to shop for supplies when she was shocked to see Yakimaru. Yakimaru, how did you shrink? Yakimaru, one of the legendary figures of the armed detective agency. With extraordinary combat abilities, a physically disabled body, and an enigmatic background, he was discovered by Edogawa Ranpo at the age of 14 and naturally joined the armed detective agency, becoming the agency's beloved figure. The original 24-year-old Yakimaru didn't require her to worry too much, but the current Yakimaru. He looked almost the same as when they first met, small, thin, about the same height as her, and probably even lighter than she was. Without hesitation, she dropped the shopping bag in her hand, stepped over in her high heels, and rather than saying it was out of concern for a fellow member, it was better to say that ever since he joined the armed detective agency, she had been particularly attentive to him. Why did you stop me? Yakimaru was stopped by Yosano Akiko, and he paused his steps while observing the pure white life flame. He gestured height with his hands in front of his chest. This person wasn't Dororo. Dororo was shorter than him. Is it the same as before, unable to see or hear? A trace of worry appeared in Yosano Akiko's eyes as she quickly called other members for assistance. Something had happened to Yakimaru. Armed Detective Agency. This detective agency, located in an old, bustling office building, had developed into a well-known organization throughout Yokohama. At this moment, the members had set aside other commissions and surrounded a person. Ranpo-san, please come and take a look. Yakimaru-san is so adorable, so small, just like a frail child from the countryside. Kenji, don't go over there. Why? He's a bit nervous, we shouldn't surround him. Let's give him some space. Ranpo-san, come quickly. That's right, Ranpo-san. It's like Yakimaru has completely forgotten about us. Could it be amnesia? Oda-kun, offering him snacks is useless, he looks like he wants to run away right now. The door burst open with a loud bang, and the out-of-breath Edogawa Ranpo, who had been away on business, rushed back. The president stood behind him, his face cold, signaling the return of two pillars of the armed detective agency. Edogawa Ranpo strode into the corner where Yakimaru was. Under everyone's expectant gaze, he lifted his glasses. His emerald eyes opened, and he began to demonstrate his extraordinary analytical powers. Huh? It's a different Yakimaru. As puzzling words flowed from his mouth, there was no need for an explanation. He could make others believe without doubt, he is a 14-year-old Yakimaru from a parallel world, familiar with me, but unfamiliar with you all. Yakimaru, you recognize me, right? My life flame should not have changed. The famous detective Edogawa Ranpo put down his rationality for a moment, waved his hand in front of Yakimaru to ease his guard. As expected, seeing this familiar gesture, Yakimaru realized he had encountered an acquaintance and reluctantly recognized the identity of the person trying to save him based on their height and silhouette, a well-intentioned person attempting to rescue him. Kunikita Dalpo instinctively asked, why is he familiar with Ranpo-san? Oda Sakunosuke, The honest man did not want to answer. Miyazawa Kenji joyfully said, in other words, Ranpo-san is exactly the same as he was 10 years ago. Everyone from the detective agency. Edogawa Ranpo ignored the sounds around him, fully focused on raising Yakimaru's favorability. 10 years ago, he was 1 meter 68 tall, and 10 years later, he was still 1 meter and 68. Moreover, he had a distinctive life flame, like an innocent child unaware of the world, which quickly made Yakimaru lower his guard. Edogawa Ranpo held his hand, the great detective is right in front of you, quickly tell me your thoughts. He has met Dororo, he will definitely help me find her. Yakimaru moved his hand slightly, bending his index finger, and impatiently wrote 3 Japanese characters on the back of his hand. Dororo. Edogawa Ranpo's green eyes darkened slightly. As expected, he was looking for him. Dororo? The armed detective agency members erupted in discussion, is this a name? It sounds more like a nickname, not a real name. Does anyone recognize it? I think I've heard Yakimaru-san mention it once or twice before. When I asked him who it was, he didn't respond. Agency member Oda Sakanosuke couldn't figure out the answer, so he simply listened to his colleagues sharing their information. He pondered over another question in his mind. So parallel worlds do exist. Oda Sakanosuke noticed that the young Akutagawa Ryuunosuke he had raised was not joining the conversation. He walked over, patted his shoulder, and comforted him, knowing that the other was not good with words. If you have any clues, it's better to say them. Akutagawa Ryuunosuke quietly said, I don't know much about Yakimaru-san's past, I can't help. The armed detective agency members' majority are people with pure life flames, even if they have killed people, but over the years, they have abandoned evil for good, cleansing their souls, eliminating their sins, and becoming trustworthy individuals to Yakimaru. This is similar to his foster father, Jukai. Jukai used to be an executioner responsible for killing, but later became a righteous doctor, and during the time he raised Yakimaru, he restored his pure life flame. Take me to her, or have Dororo come find me. Yakimaru silently pleaded with Edogawa Ranpo, causing Ranpo's heart to become disturbed. Ah, there is no way to find Dororo. These words brought a silence over the office. They all heard the armed detective agency strategist speak the harsh words, your Dororo is dead, and has been dead for 2 years, so dead that he cannot die any further. Just stay here and wait peacefully to return. 2 years ago. Something in Oda Sakanosuke's heart skipped a beat. That was a sensitive point in time. The Port Mafia boss died at that time, sparking a conflict between the armed detective agency and the Port Mafia. Why do you keep thinking about him? Edogawa Ranpo reached out to touch Yakimaru's ponytail, diverting his attention, but a hint of frustration crept in as Yakimaru was entangled by this kind of person. He wasn't a good person, can't I be better than him? At least I never made you cry. Yakimaru covered his ponytail, the eyes on the mask on his face was so lifelike that it was difficult for anyone to lie to him. Help me. He remembered how Dororo liked to place things on him, and immediately found them, as a pile of eavesdropping devices once again appeared before everyone's eyes, making these people even more certain, Dororo definitely wasn't an ordinary person. Would an ordinary person monitor Yakimaru like that? Edogawa Ranpo placed those eavesdropping devices from 10 years ago back onto his clothes, full of resentment. Alright, I'll help you this time. Because you truly like this person, and you even have the potential to change. Edogawa Ranpo, like Yakimaru's Dororo, in his heart, held his hand but never intertwined fingers, showing more of a friendly kindness. With the help of fellow members, he flagged down a cab and took Yakimaru to a graveyard. 15 minutes later, the two stood in front of a well-guarded tombstone. There was no trace of a life flame, not a single pure white light. The Port Mafia people secretly observed the two visitors. Yakimaru still couldn't see Dororo. Edogawa Ranpo stared intently at him, then had him squat down and touch the gravestone before saying, he's just a coward, willing to do evil things to achieve his goals, too scared to face you. You should accept this fact sooner. Don't cry for him a second time. A faint pink mist appeared, and the black-haired boy returned to his own world in confusion. Once again, the long-haired young man, still squatting, was silent after seeing clearly what he had been fumbling with. Ranpo-san, don't you feel guilty for doing this? After all, he doesn't know, does he? Edogawa Ranpo felt that he was a gentle and kind person, perfectly fulfilling Yakimaru's wish. If you can't see, then you don't need to know that the person you like has died. If you can't hear, then you don't need to be hurt by the truth. The distinction is fleeting, as long as Yakimaru returns and sees Dororo, it will be fine. Isn't that right? Edogawa Ranpo stared at the gravestone Yakimaru is fumbling with, feeling a bit envious of the dead. Let's go back. I don't know the way. Are you really heartless enough to leave the great detective behind in a graveyard? The one who raised Yakimaru in this world, is precisely this great detective. 24-year-old Yakimaru said miserably, I still don't understand why he did that. Edogawa Ranpo walked ahead without turning back and replied, don't try to figure it out, you won't be able to comprehend his logic. If you keep going, you'll end up like the second Oda Sakanosuke. Yakimaru whispered. Not Oda Sakanosuke. In his previous life, he had read his works. Edogawa Ranpo nodded. Very interesting, I'll tell him when I get back. Yakimaru shouted in panic, no, don't. The two walked away. In the suburbs of Yokohama, in a building of an orphanage, the over 40-year-old director turned off all the equipment in the room. Finally, he used a lighter to ignite the yellowed envelope in his hand. Dazai-kun. What is the opportunity you are waiting for? You, who should have died long ago, didn't hesitate to use his hand to manipulate the time machine, extending through time. Behind all this, there must be a reason for you to make Yakimaru go to another parallel world first. Over there, is there a chance for you to hope for him to be complete and healthy? Who can save Yakimaru? His lips curled up slightly, thinking about how the Port Mafia had paid over $1 billion for a lifetime membership illusion, and how the Millefiori provided the latest fake body, with the two forces working together to forcibly restore Yakimaru to a normal human. To repair a puppet born cursed, you really do know how to squander resources. Poor successor Chiyukun. The ashes scattered, and the orphanage returned to its usual state, with the director leading a blonde-haired young girl to take care of the other orphans. The world won't stop functioning just because someone's gone. People like you, people like me. Chapter 34 End. Chapter 35, The Saiki Brothers. Yakimaru once again felt a wave of dizziness and a sense of weightlessness, as if the ground beneath his feet was hollow, losing all sense of security. This is too hard for me. This world isn't kind to the blind at all. Just as he was burning with anxiety over losing Dororo, someone grabbed his hand first. His unsteady steps caused him to bump into a person beside him. A pure white flame was burning. The mind's eye sketched out the other's form, approaching a humanoid figure with flames that gave off the soft feeling of cotton candy. Not the kind packaged on supermarket shelves, but more like the fluffy threads spun from finely ground sugar by street vendors. Each thread formed into a delicate cotton candy, resembling pure white clouds, akin to a child untouched by darkness. This was his Dororo, the wise girl with an unclear appearance, who could always find him at any moment. An hour passed without trouble, how fortunate. I don't want to lose you again. Yakimaru was not in a grand hotel hall, but in a solitary guest room. He held Dazai-Osamu's unsteady body and fell sitting on the bed, both hands gripping the other's shoulders. There was no romantic atmosphere between them, just the meeting of two 14-year-olds, two young lives. In the midst of their wandering, they came to understand each other, and from then on, they could only lick their wounds like lonely wild beasts, becoming obedient puppets in the eyes of others. Yakimaru is back, did you have fun in the future? The feeling of lost and found again, Dazai-Osamu also felt it. With a good-natured smile, he gently soothed the other's back. There was no smell of fresh blood, nor was there a sensation of any wounds. The Vongala family initially stated that the 10-year bazooka exchange would last 5 minutes, but this time the exchange lasted for approximately an hour, far exceeding everyone's expectations here. Dazai-Osamu once believed he had fallen into a trap and was about to lose his Yakimaru and harbored resentment towards the Vongala family. He couldn't recall just how terrifying the thought that arose in him was at that moment, the desire to destroy the giant monster in others' eyes, making the Vongala taste the feeling of losing something important. That's right. The important thing is, Yakimaru is the only asset Dazai-Osamu possesses. How lucky. It's just 1 hour. Dazai-Osamu noticed that Yakimaru didn't seem pleased and couldn't help but say, looks like I didn't host you well, huh? Parallel worlds, 10 years later, he truly is the most useless of the useless. Not only making the puppet cry, but actually making the 24-year-old Yakimaru ask, are you my Dororo? When Dazai-Osamu heard that, he was stunned. Could Yakimaru possibly have a second Dororo? It's one thing not daring to hope for his own happiness, but putting his heart and soul into someone else is another. Yakimaru, you don't need to take this chance to cling on to me. Lying on the bed, Dazai-Osamu lifted Yakamaru's delicate artificial face, their bodies pressed close together. The human heart beat rhythmically, free of anxiety and tension. After letting down their guard, the two seemed like a painting of two curled-up figures. Through the gap in the curtain, a ray of sunlight shone in, and from their appearance, one could faintly see what they might look like when they grow older. One had long hair that floated, more ethereal and detached than a ghost, while the other looked like they were smiling, their eyes seemingly filled with bewilderment. Everyone wears a mask in life, not because they don't dare to take it off, but because they fear that their inner self is too ugly, which might cause the other person to despise them. In this moment alone, Dazai-Osamu felt the impulse to remove his mask. He thought to himself, perhaps he had been provoked by Yakamaru from 10 years later. He actually needs to guess. Remember. Dazai-Osamu tilted his head back, seriously saying to the person above him, I am your Dororo. He took Yakamaru's hand and wrote on the bed sheet in a script the other person would surely understand. Dororo. If he lives inside the other's heart, then let him be the simple Dororo, and not the complicated Dazai-Osamu. After all his courage to admit this was temporarily mustered up. How shameful it is, to become someone else's spiritual pillar, to deceive someone who cannot clearly see the world. He tells himself he'll stay by their side, naively forgetting how many things he's discarded in the past. In this world, is there something worth enduring prolonged suffering to search for? Yakamaru, if you choose to exist, then don't cry. Let me see the beauty of life. Unconsciously, noon had arrived, and Dazai-Osamu and Yakamaru seemed to have forgotten what had happened earlier as they joined the Vongala family gathering. Lambo, as always, was afraid of Yakamaru and stayed near Sawada Tsunayoshi, unusually quiet. Sawada Tsunayoshi, however, was quite curious about Yakamaru but refrained from approaching due to Lambo's fear. Hibari Kyoya appeared at the end of the meal, carrying injuries. He had returned after a fight with Nakahara Chuya on Suribachi Street. His fighting spirit and pride were not diminished, in fact, he fought with increasing ferocity. It's very simple. After seeing Nakahara Chuya's full-power corruption force explosion, he immediately made the other party his target. If it can be defeated in an instant, it's not called a target. After a moment, his phoenix eyes suddenly glanced toward Yakamaru. Oh! Another carnivore. Dazai-Osamu ignored the newly arrived Hibari Kyoya and placed food on Yakamaru's plate. Yakamaru instinctively tried to push away the mask on his face, but Dazai-Osamu gave his right leg a small kick under the table. Yakamaru, alright, I forgot I have a mouth and a tongue. He ate while strangely touching his face without drawing any attention, his expression indifferent, opening his mouth to eat something. Eating on one side while remaining completely unruffled. No sense of taste. Dazai-Osamu, with amusement, offered strange and rare foods to Yakamaru, anything on the menu that he wouldn't dare eat himself, he gave all of it to Yakamaru to try. Then, based on the number of bites Yakamaru took, he determined how tough it was to chew. Afterward, during a leisurely moment, Dazai-Osamu first had Ranking Futa gather 2 pieces of intelligence for Mori-san's request. Upon completing the task, he calmly made a third request. Futa-kun, the third ranking is a personal request of mine, it has nothing to do with the port mafia. Please tell me the method with the highest hope of fully restoring Yakamaru's body. In an instant, the Vongala family members turned their eyes toward Yakamaru. Restore his body. Sawada Tsunayoshi's face turned pale, that face. Reborn stopped his train of thought, not wanting him to confront the cruel reality too soon. His jet-black eyes gazed at Yakamaru, with a hint of admiration in them. This young man's body is incomplete. Futa, by helping to rank him, you're also saving him. Got it. Futa withdrew his gaze, innocently nodding, very supportive of using rankings to search for and help people. In the darkness, one always seeks the light, which is why he liked Tsunami so much. Plates of food, knives, forks, chopsticks, and various other items floated up. Sitting at the center of everyone, Futa raised the ranking book, communicating with the firm belief in the existence of the ranking stars. The sun shone outside, and there was no rain, as if even the heavens were supporting Futa in finding a new path for Yakimaru. Yakimaru's heart and eyes stared intently at the life flame of young Futa. This was the third time. There was no way to describe the force dispersing. He reached out with his fingertips, touching the faint fragments of light floating toward him, merging into his body. There was nothing unusual, like a simple visual feast. The light orb entered his spiritual world from reality. So beautiful, like fireflies scattering in all directions. Yakimaru wanted to touch the fragments of light again. Futa cheerfully shouted, "Can you see this star ranking, big brother?" Those who are destined to see the star ranking will definitely be able to see the light within. The ceiling and glass windows obstructed the view, making it impossible for Yakimaru to perceive the source of the ranking power. He stood surrounded by countless fragments of light, with a faint glow reflecting deep within his pupils. Without further distraction, Futa recited the ranking he saw. The one most likely to restore Yakimaru completely, ranked 3rd. Yakuran Gesso. 2nd place. Saiki Kusuke. 1st place. Saiki Kusuo. The top 3 most hidden individuals in this world have instantly shed their cloaks, and it turns out that the 1st and 2nd place might even be related. The cameras in the hotel and dining area are so small they can barely be detected as they move. As for the 3rd place, Yakuran Gesso, who was studying in Italy, suddenly felt a chill run through his body, and even the taste of his cotton candy dulled. According to the timing, I shouldn't be under surveillance. He opened a new flavor of cotton candy, sitting in the classroom with a gloomy expression. I'm just a good student who follows the rules, not planning to destroy the world, nor aiming to dominate it. So why is my world so many times more dangerous than other parallel dimensions? The silver-haired boy's deep eyes were cold, as if he saw through the essence of the world. But he did not dare to look. There are some things that, if seen, will lead to death. In front of him was a space-time monster, behind him something indescribable, forcing him to awaken memories from parallel timelines. The obedient and reserved Yakuran could only look on with disdain at the more powerful Yakuran Gesso, taking pleasure in his misfortune. If you have the guts, come here and see who dies first, me or the hunting dogs that will tear you apart. Yakuran Gesso, no cotton candy in school. A piece of chalk struck him. Mafia Academy's fearsome teacher, with a terrifying aura, looked at the student whose physical capabilities were similar to his. The academic achievements were remarkable. The heir of the Gesso family, Yakuran Gesso, sat at his desk, letting out a pitiful plea for mercy. I couldn't hold it in. It won't happen again. There were no cameras in the school's classroom, but Yakuran Gesso accidentally noticed something outside the window. It looked exactly like a streetlight surveillance camera, pointed right at him. Yakuran Gesso. Impossible, where could I have been exposed? In a deeply hidden laboratory in England, a blonde youth, ranked 2nd on Futa's list, picked up a helmet and put it on, isolating himself from the strange and rare forces of the outside world. He spoke in a grim tone. As expected, superpowers and abilities like that are just cheating. Only science can be trusted. Saiki Kusuke had always been searching for the mastermind behind the time-space monster crimes. After conducting an investigation, he discovered that in Yokohama, Japan, he had finally found the culprit responsible for causing his younger brother to drift around, forced to leave their parents. However, after finding him, Saiki Kusuke realized one problem: how did the other party manage to survive the pursuit of the time-space monster? He has no interest in the damaged body parts of humans, or perhaps he has no interest in anyone outside of his own family. He is completely a scientist in his thinking, so cold that he no longer considers himself human. Eyes? Vision? After easily finding Yakuran Gesso, Saiki Kusuke quickly began calculating the weaknesses of the time-space creature. Through surveillance, it has been identified as a species that does not exist in the same dimensional plane, resembling a hound or bat. It cannot be looked at directly, cannot be touched, its entire body is coated with an unknown deadly poison. It attacks indiscriminately across time and space, and in a single day, it can traverse 100 million years on the timeline. Kusuo's clairvoyance and petrification have no effect on the monster, which means that its appearance in front of us is some sort of phenomenon rather than a real entity. Proceed with the first hypothesis to kill. Based on the calculation results, a specialized weapon for attack must be developed. Saiki Kusuke, filled with excitement, completely ignored his little brother who didn't get to eat any coffee pudding and started researching the new weapon. However, the research and development of the weapon would take years. He is incredibly dense. To the point where, over in Yokohama, this was only a monitoring duty. Saiki Kusuke treatment towards Dazai Osamu's puppet, or Yakimaru fought against evil beings and the demon god entirely overlooked. After collecting the energy data of the ability, no longer human, and Yakimaru's body data, he became deeply engrossed in research, dedicating his life to defeating various superpowers for the sake of his younger brother. Because of this, Saiki Kusuke successfully deviated from the shortcut, running 1,000 loops toward the most difficult path of research and invention. How to avoid the hounds of Tindalos is the final exam question for the Transmigration Department interns. Yakimaru knows it. Chapter 35 End.